Okay, so just last week, President Trump called Jerome Powell a major loser and literally threatened to fire him if he doesn't start cutting interest rates.
Oh, if I want him out, he'll be out of there real fast, believe me.
Guys, this is getting heated, and I got my popcorn ready for this drama. But in all seriousness, we should all be paying close attention here, because what happens with this feud could either push Bitcoin to new all-time highs or crash the markets altogether. So in today's video, I want to dive into some critical questions surrounding this feud, such as, can Trump really fire Powell? Who would replace him? And most importantly, what does this all mean for Bitcoin? Okay, so first things first, if you don't know who Jerome Powell is, then you've probably been living in a cave all this time, because he's the chair of the Federal Reserve, which means that he's the most powerful central banker in the world. His decisions on interest rates, inflation, and monetary policy affect not only the US economy, but pretty much the entire world economy. Now, back in 2022, Powell started to aggressively raise interest rates to fight the inflation that was out of control back then. And honestly, it kind of worked, as inflation has come down significantly any way you slice it. So everything is good, right? Like, what's the problem here? Well, I'll tell you the problem. You see, Powell is being super cautious and even hesitant to lower interest rates, even though Trump thinks that that's exactly what the economy needs right now. In fact, Trump believes that Powell's overly cautious approach is choking our economy and hindering growth for no good reason. Now, to be honest, Trump might be onto something here, because high Fed interest rates directly affect our daily lives. It leads to higher rates on our credit cards, mortgages, and even car loans. Plus, businesses start to cut back on hiring and investing in their growth because borrowing money gets to be more expensive. So right now, Trump and his team are pissed because their tariffs and trade war have already stirred up a bunch of economic uncertainty. So they really want to lower rates to help give the economy a boost. In fact, Trump got so frustrated recently that he said, quote, "If I want Powell out, he'll be out real fast." But this brings us to an important question, and that's, can Trump really fire Powell? Well, the answer to that is actually not as straightforward as you may think. You see, technically, the Fed chair operates independently from the president, and legally speaking, they can only be removed for cause, which most people take as serious misconduct, and not just some minor policy disagreement. So that's the end of that story, right? Well, not so fast, because this is where things get interesting. You see, the Trump administration is involved in a Supreme Court case right now that tests the limits of their power over independent agencies. So depending on how that turns out, Trump's ability to fire Powell could become clearer and maybe even easier to do. But honestly, even if Trump gets the green light, I seriously doubt that he'd fire Powell, because the market backlash to that would be absolutely insane. You see, Wall Street hates uncertainty more than anything else. And if Powell was suddenly fired, the entire stock market would likely crash, and probably the whole financial system would be thrown into chaos. So, point is, the short-term damage that would cause would outweigh any potential benefit that Trump is looking for. But here's the thing. Trump doesn't really even have to fire Powell, because Powell's term is already ending in the May of 2026, just about a year from now. So Trump can simply wait and then pick a new Fed chair who's more aligned with his policies, and he would get to avoid all that crazy market turmoil as a result. So honestly, this is looking like the most likely scenario by far. Now, the next question becomes, who will Trump pick to replace Powell, and what does that mean for Bitcoin and our bags? Well, there are some really interesting options to replace him. But before we get to them, I want to share with you something super interesting from our channel partner, FEMX. So if you're trading crypto, you probably already know the limitations of DEXs. They have limited coins, you can't really use leverage on them, and many of them have complicated interfaces that feel like rocket science. Well, FEMX solves these headaches with their special feature called pilot contracts. Basically, those let you trade coins that you can normally only do so on DEXs, but on a CEX, aka FEMX. And you can use up to 3x leverage on them. So you don't have to only buy or sell, but you could even short, for example, like if you know of some cabal controlled coin which you think will dump. Now, here's the best part. FEMEX lets you use things like stop losses and take profits on these pilot contract coins, which is something that you don't get on most DEXs. So if you want to trade these DEX tokens, but with all the bells and whistles of a centralized exchange, then these pilot contracts are exactly what you're looking for. Just check them out using my links below. Alright, back to the Trump-Powell drama. And the top 2 people currently in line to replace Powell are Kevin Warsh and Chris Waller. Warsh is a former Fed governor who has openly criticized Powell's cautious approach, and he also aligns with Trump politically. Waller, on the other hand, is currently serving at the Fed and has already voiced support for quicker rate cuts and even restarting QE, aka money printing. But you know what? Why does any of this matter to us Bitcoin investors? Well, here's the thing. Historically, when the Fed adopts easier monetary policies, like cutting rates or printing money, it floods our economy with extra cash. This typically devalues the dollar because there's more of them, right? And it pushes investors towards riskier assets, such as Bitcoin. We saw this happen in real time during the pandemic, as a record amount of money was printed and almost everything rocketed, be it Bitcoin, shitcoins, or even meme stocks. Okay, so that all makes sense, right? But does it pretty much mean that we have to wait for a new Fed chair and such an easy monetary policy before we get a new bull run? Well, surprisingly, the answer is maybe not. Because there is an interesting argument that some people are making that we don't even need QE to kick off a new bull run. You see, when we look at this chart, which plots Bitcoin's price versus periods of QE and QT, then we clearly see that the answer is no. I mean, yes, obviously QE helps, but Bitcoin's rise over the years isn't solely dependent on having easy monetary policy. Bitcoin also has other strong forces pushing it forward, such as adoption by institutions and nation states, regulatory clarity, and just plain old mainstream acceptance. Also, another interesting point that this analyst makes is that all we need for a new bull run is a weak US dollar, and that QE in and of itself is not required. So the point here is that maybe all this focus on what will Powell do and who will replace him misses the bigger picture, which is that Bitcoin's future isn't just tied to the Fed, and it has more things going for it that could bring about the next bull market. But anyhow, let's take a huge step back and put this all together. So Powell's time as Fed chair is nearly up, whether Trump fires him or not. And because markets are forward-looking, as soon as a more easy money Fed chair is on the horizon, we could see Bitcoin and other risk assets start to pump, like even before Powell officially leaves office. So what should you be doing then? Well, definitely keep a close eye on all these developments and position yourself accordingly, because these moves could happen sooner than you think. But now I want to hear from you. Do you think Trump's next Fed chair could trigger the next huge bull run, potentially pushing Bitcoin to 250K or higher? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Oh, and by the way, I recently made a detailed comparison between gold versus Bitcoin as potential investments, because gold has been killing it lately. So if you want to see that analysis and my verdict on that, then just watch this video right here.